everyone. Welcome to Open. I'm Rhina Valentin, your hosting Café con Leche for the next hour. Always inviting you to get social with us online. That is, tweet us and follow us on Instagram at BronxNet TV and like us on Facebook at Open BronxNet Television. And of course, while you're there, follow me on Twitter, FB, Instagram, Insta Stories, and LinkedIn at Rhina Valentin. So it's been 5 months since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. And now New York City enters phase 3 of reopening the economy. Well, while things seem to be moving, New York City is still left in an economic crisis with an $88.1 billion budget that was recently approved by the New York City Council. Joining us to share more, we welcome New York City Council member of the 16th District, Vanessa Gibson. Hello, Vanessa.
Hi, Rhina. Good to see you today.
It's good to see you. A few months later, we had you on in the beginning of this pandemic. And so do share. I'm watching you and you're out there, physically present with your community and your constituents. And so just share how far along we've come.
So our worlds have been turned upside down since March, since we had the first confirmed case of COVID-19. I think you watched the city close in terms of businesses, schools, just a lot of services that were really closed, a lot of non-essential services. You watched the city of New York take a leadership role along with the state government in trying to make sure that we contain this virus. Many of us didn't know a lot of information about COVID-19. We didn't know its source. We knew some of the characteristics of COVID in terms of things that you should be mindful of, the coughing, the dry cough, and other things like that. And I think you saw a lot of people hospitalized. We struggled to get testing in communities of color in the outer boroughs like the Bronx. I think it was a lot for us to learn and adapt to a new world of being isolated in our homes since March, schools being closed, adopting remote learning for children. It was really challenging. And certainly I continue to pray for everyone affected by COVID-19.
Yes, and thank you for sharing all of that and summarizing exactly what we've all been enduring for the past 5 months, right? Where we are now is redesigning and also restructuring. And in what we didn't mention is that there's been a lot of protesting going on with regards to defunding the police. And I know that there was a budget that was just approved, and I kind of reviewed the budget and noticed that what they're considering defunding the police is like defunding certain departments that reside within the police department, but not necessarily the police.
So I think what you've seen across the country, and we remind ourselves of the horrific murder by police officers in Minneapolis of George Floyd. And that really started this movement. But understand, Black Americans have felt systemic racism for 401 years. And then we also had the pandemic of COVID-19. So we've been dealing with multiple battles for quite some time. But I think George Floyd and his horrific murder really highlighted police brutality in its face. For many of us that have seen it in New York City with the death of Eric Garner and so many other young men of color that have been killed by police violence, it really started a movement. And I think people have been very upset, very frustrated, feeling that the only way we're going to change systemic racism is to change the way police officers operate. And certainly the budget that we passed at the City Council is a huge part of that. Also, the legislative process as well, repealing 50A, the chokehold ban, prohibition, looking at so many measures where police officers are held accountable, but also supporting the police department. Let's be honest, a majority of New Yorkers want to see police in their streets, in their communities. They don't want to see abusive police and officers using excessive force, but they want to see police to feel safe. I think for many New Yorkers, we've equated safety with police officers and policing in general, but we have to redefine what police and public safety looks like in America and in New York City. And that means looking at school safety. It means looking at de-escalation. It means looking at de-escalation tactics that address these systemic issues that young people are facing, like poverty, and dealing with it not from a law enforcement perspective, looking at crisis management system and the anti-gun violence responders, looking at holistic services, trauma-informed care, healing centers. There's a lot that I think we can do and we should be doing. And as a result of this movement, New Yorkers spoke up. There were a lot of protesters and demonstrations because they really wanted to see a significant cut in the NYPD's budget. Now, how we got there is the question. Some agree, some don't. Some think we went too far. Some think it wasn't enough. I think you find a variation depending on what neighborhood you talk to and the residents you speak to. But at the end of the day, we got no support from the federal government. We were cut by Albany in their budget of $2 billion. We lost $7 billion in revenue as a result of COVID, and we had a $9 billion budget deficit. So when you put all of that together and there's no additional revenue, the only way you balance the budget are reserves, which we had. Thank goodness the council has pushed that, as well as cuts. Reserves and cuts is what makes up the $88.1 billion budget.
Right. And so I was reviewing Mayor de Blasio's budget, the budget announcement, and it just kind of, I just wonder if it's really going to stop or even encourage people to stop protesting based on the way the monies were allocated. Because, I mean, while you're referring to it as defunding the police, there's this, 307.5 million was transferred from safety agents from NYPD to DOE. So it's just like a matter of departments that the money was transferred, but they're still, and we're talking about the school safety agents. We're not even talking about NYPD. I mean, the only place I'm seeing here where the NYPD was defunded is in the cadet classes.
So we eliminated the cadet class. We eliminated the April Academy class that did not start. We eliminated the July class as well. Some wanted us to go further and eliminate more, but as a result of our actions, the uniformed headcount at the NYPD has now been reduced by 1,163 officers. That's taken from their baseline of their headcount. We've also put them on a real mandate on overtime spending, about $300 million that they need to save out of an overall overtime budget of $700 million. Those are significant pieces. Some believe the NYPD can do it, some don't think so. But I think the recognition of fundamental change and changing racism in a system you cannot achieve in a one-year budget, right?
Right.
And so many believe that there has to be a disciplinary system where we find a way to get rid of the older senior officers that are resistant to change, that accumulate excessive substantiated CCRB complaints and lawsuits, which we've seen. Those are the officers that do not serve the department well, that we don't want on patrol in our communities. The brand new officers that have recently have been hired, I think can be a part of the solution and not the problem. They are new officers with ideas that no one is listening to. We have to give them an opportunity to be role models and change agents in a department that has been a part of systemic racism for generations. This has been going on for years. So I don't think it's realistic to think that things will change in a one-year budget. Now, New Yorkers will continue to protest. They will continue to express a lot of concerns, but the school safety transfer is not just a shifting of money. It's going to be a shifting of the behavior. We're going to change how school safety agents operate, taking away their arresting power and their handcuffs, reducing suspensions and summons and arrests in our schools, breaking down the pipeline to prison. School safety agents are a majority of Black women, and there's no way that I would support laying off 5,000 Black women as school safety agents, because again, they are not a part of the problem, but we can work with their leadership in turning around their environment so we have more holistic trauma-informed care and we do more restorative justice work instead of law enforcement.
Yes, and that's a wonderful way to present it. And I understand your points and as well as your values. It's just, there's just, I don't know, there's a sense of kind of like, it's almost like, I guess people were, and this is just in speaking to individuals, were kind of looking for something that was going to reform the actual police department, not departments that reside within the police department, such as the crossing guards, such as the school safety agents. And that's why I wanted to address it today.
Right. And I think that is a valid expectation. I do want to recognize and point out to all viewers that when you came into this budget process in this season that we did, and let me remind you, it was done remotely from April, the council finance team worked very hard with the administration. On many of these points and priorities, we came from a place of zero, where they eliminated all youth programs, all summer camps, Sonic, Compass, Beacon, Cornerstone. They wanted to give us nothing. They wanted to decimate the CUNY ASAP program, cut single shepherd guidance counselors. They wanted to lay off workers, and we could not let that happen. So we had a lot of priorities we had to get through within a time frame. Some people argue we should have waited and held out to get more, but the budget was due July 1st. And summer programs needed to start. CBOs needed to know the money they were getting in the budget. So we couldn't do that. That wasn't an option. The federal government has failed us. They have not come through. We need billions of dollars to now avoid layoffs in the fall. And we also need our colleagues in Albany to support us with the authority to borrow money. We didn't get that by adoption either. So we had all of these challenges that we were facing. And I think for many New Yorkers, again, you've seen some of the surveys and polls. New Yorkers want to see cops. They want to see a police presence. They want to see police do better. Everyone agrees on police reform. The challenge is how you get there. I simply do not believe that you can achieve systemic racism and overcoming that in a one-year budget. I just don't think it's possible. I think we have to find a way to work and change the disciplinary system to get rid of senior officers that don't want to change, that don't want to sometimes follow the new rules and new regulations of legislation that we've passed. Those are the problem officers that are using excessive force on our Black and brown New Yorkers. Now, you can't achieve that in the budget. That's just not possible, right? So I think, it's a start. It's the floor and not the ceiling. And I think we have a lot more room to grow. We only have one more year with this administration. So my successor in the council, a majority of us are termed out. There's going to be a new wave of leadership coming into the city. And I pray that they take this to the next step. That's what should happen.
And that's a wonderful way to end this segment. Basically, what she's saying to everybody is make sure you get out and vote.
That's right. The young people are going to take over, and I'm happy to step aside and let them lead.
Well, thank you. And thank you for giving us your time. Council member Vanessa Gibson, once again, for you guys, if you want to keep up to date on the ever-changing matters and the 16th District and Council member Vanessa Gibson, be sure to visit it's council.nyc.gov/district-16. It's quite the mouthful. Anyway, we have to take a quick break, but when we return, we'll talk business as New York City continues reopening. Don't go anywhere.